Welcome back to the Fear and Beer podcast,
where we discuss all things Halloween Horror Nights, horror movies, and just a little bit of beer.
So kill the lights, grab a cold one, and join us as we dive into this mad world we love.
I'm Nick.
I'm Seamus.
And I'm Jamie.
Like scary movies.
Uh-huh.
Here's Johnny.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
You miss me.
Aren't you drinking?
I never drink. Why?
And as a reminder to all listening, if you want to help us to continue growing as a podcast, don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on whichever streaming platform you use.
To stay up to date with us and all of our episodes, be sure to follow all of our socials. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Fear and Beer Pod.
Feel free to reach out to us. We love to interact with you all.
This is a fly by your pants. Is that the saying? Fly by your pants?
Fly by the seat of your pants.
Fly by the
seat of your pants. Yeah, that's what this episode is going to be, because we literally just flew back home today. Me and Jamie were in California the last week. We flew out Wednesday night California time and landed at 7 a.m. Thursday morning. And I figured we can't go 2 weeks without doing an episode, even though it's still February. There's still stuff to be talked about. We kind of got ourselves on a little roll last week while we were talking about all these, old faces, new places, new icons, integrated stories, all kinds of stuff. And it kind of got the brain turning a little bit, because there's, I think, more characters that we didn't really dive into. Now, last week, we really discussed a lot of those, pseudo icons, scrapped icons, what have you. But I do think there's a lot of other cool characters that aren't necessarily tied into, the lore and the history and all that stuff. But it would be cool if they were, just because their character design is really fun. I think a lot of their zones or houses were very well received, and people do want to see them back in some way, shape, or form. And I don't know if we have all of the answers as to how to make these things happen, but I think there's enough there to kind of bring it up to a discussion and see what we have to work with. Now, like I said, this is kind of oh gosh, Seamus is drinking. Perfect, because I am not. Like I said, we just traveled in. I am so goddamn tired. I didn't sleep a lick on the way home. No. I was working with half of a seat on the plane because somebody was sitting next to me took up their seat and half of my seat. And it was just a miserable experience, probably for the both of us. But I just want to say it was probably more miserable for me, because it was just god awful. So I do not have a beer. I'm not drinking. I think I kind of ran the fridge out before we went on vacation, so that way I can get some more craft beers in the coming weeks, but I just didn't have the drive to go get it today. I just didn't feel like getting it. So Seamus is representing the beer for us tonight, it looks like.
Yeah, nothing special though.
Hey, it's
same old.
It's the thought
better
that
than
counts. Me. Me and you are in the same boat with a whole bunch of nothing. So I guess, like, maybe before we get into discussion, instead of talking about beers and stuff, Jamie, let's just talk a little bit about the trip, because we got to go see some cool spots, some of your favorite spots that you've been wanting to go. So why don't we just kind of talk a little bit about that? And we do have something coming in the video format that I'll discuss in a moment. But I know the one place that you want to talk about, and I got two that I'll kind of talk about.
Yeah, so of course we finally make it out of California. For years I've been wanting to go to Santa Cruz to go see the boardwalk where they filmed The Lost Boys, they filmed Us, they filmed Bumblebee, Sudden Impact, a bunch of different films there. But just our luck, we get there and it's literally like torrential downpour, like 30-mile-an-hour winds, like the worst fucking weather they've seen in like years, they said. So the first 2 days the boardwalks were closed. The third day we were able to go and explore around a little bit, which was really fun. In the days prior I was still able to get a couple shots from the beach and stuff like that, but we got a couple good spots that I was able to line up from Us and from The Lost Boys alike. And there's one in particular that I really enjoy. The hot dog on a stick stand is such a small piece, I feel like, in both films, because in the back it can be seen in Us when they're walking down the boardwalk, and then in The Lost Boys as well when Star is talking to Michael, you can see it in the background as well. But also it could be seen in Killer Clowns from Outer Space. They filmed a couple clips at the boardwalk as well, which is pretty cool. So it was definitely a very eventful weekend. It was a lot of fun. We got to go to, I kind of ventured off myself as soon as we got there and left Nick in the dust, but I found a couple other spots myself too. But it was a really great trip. It was a lot of fun. We definitely want to go back so we could get the full experience of the boardwalk when it's not off season and whatnot.
Yeah, it was really cool to see. I am disappointed. I wish it was, all lit up and I got to feast on Horror Night style food on the boardwalk. But yeah, so we got to check out that spot. So, you'll probably be posting about that, talking about the different shots that line up.
Yeah.
The two spots that I really like, one's very quick. I got to go to the corner of Cherry and Washington, which, if you're not familiar with Zodiac Killer or the Zodiac movie, that's where he, has his last confirmed kill of Paul Stein, where he shot the taxi driver and walked away. So that was pretty cool. I took a picture. I might post that. That was really all we got. But we also did a tour of Alcatraz, which not really horror stuff like that, but I took some videos. I'm going to do some sort of vloggy style overlay of some of the information and stories that they told us, because there was some really cool escape plans and escape stories that they
Really cool.
told us about there. So I asked the people if y'all wanted on socials me to post a video about that, and you pretty much all said yes. So I will start working on that over in the coming weeks. No promises as to when that will drop, but we'll be putting that onto our YouTube channel. So if you don't follow us there, go to YouTube, subscribe, and check that out, because we'll be up in a little bit. I'll be updating you when it's coming along, but it's not at the top of my list of things to do immediately, but it will be getting done for sure. So let's get into these faces. Now, I think we might be able to run through some of these a little bit quicker than others, obviously, because some of these just don't have the extensive stories that others do. Now, these aren't all tied into the lore. The thing that really sparked this discussion was the Oddfellow treatment, and that was really taking that sort of unknown character. You knew the name just from lore, and you only knew it if you were like a deep HHN person. If you asked the random goer at HHN 29 who Dr. Oddfellow was, I don't think the majority of them would know him or how he ties into the story. So that rejuvenation of older characters was pretty cool. So I really got us interested in seeing this. So these characters that we have, some are more known than others. Some don't have names, some have minimal stories. So we're just kind of talk about if they could be that icon level. Is there a way to tie it in? Would it be interesting enough to do? But I think we'll get some answers as we start to discuss. So Jamie, why don't you kick us off with our first little character that we got here?
Yeah, so I know we were saying some of these characters aren't going to have as much backstory, but this one I actually wrote a little bit about. There was quite a bit of information. So you guys will have to tell me what you think about this. So Nathaniel Crow is who we're going to be talking about. Nathaniel Crow was an unused concept icon by Mike Aiello. So, a little bit of backstory. Nathaniel Crow was an attempted pumpkin farmer who was in hopes of growing and selling the pumpkins, but they would inevitably rot once he picked them. He meets Jack the Clown, who tells him that the land is cursed and nothing will ever grow. Jack offers a proposition to Nathaniel about buying the rights to his land for his carnival. This would be the land for Halloween Horror Nights' Carnival of Carnage. Crow is eventually seduced by the horrors of the carnival. He questions Jack, "Why do I not die when others do?" Jack responded with, "You'll see." Once Jack and the carnival left, Nathaniel was filled with hate. After seeing a tethered old post from the carnival in the now desolate field, he begins to bleed from sheer rage onto the poster. The blood composes itself into an anonymous rhyme. Once the blood returns to his body, he realizes he's ultimately cursed to eternity, and the pumpkins have all been carved into weird faces with candles lit inside them. Above the pumpkins were crows with glowing red eyes in the decaying trees. As he tried to run away, the roots encased him in the ground, and the crows attacked him, pecking his eyes out and filling the missing parts of his body with pieces from the pumpkins. So yeah, HHN Wiki, again, shout out to you guys, because you had so much information that I kind of just bundled up all together in that. But it was, before we get into talking about Nathaniel Crow, I think you had told me this before, Nick, when we did the Wicked Growth House, that Nathaniel Crow was kind of in the house per se, when I think we walked through the barn and he was hanging up and had his eyes pecked out by the crows and stuff.
Yeah, there was a point in the house where you walk, and on your left, on top of like some hay bales, was a static figure with crows on it, and that was
Gotcha.
meant to be Nathaniel Crow.
Because otherwise, I don't think he has been used at the event, if I'm not mistaken.
No, it was just kind of lore that fell to the wayside, essentially.
And his story is
Now,
so good.
it is a good
So
story, and
interesting.
it almost blended into the Pumpkin Lord story. Like those
Yes.
two are kind of one and the same essentially. So
Mhm.
it'd be interesting to see how you'd be able to bring him in now with Pumpkin Lord being a known enough figure.
Right.
So what do you, Seamus, do you think that this is a way that we could, like, could we have both? Or should they kind of retcon something that, like, Pumpkin Lord grew out of the body where Crow died, or something like that?
That's what I was just gonna
Yeah,
say.
you'd probably have to combine the two in
Mhm.
some way. I don't know if he would hold on. I don't know if he would have a hold on the event by himself. Plus, he was a character in the house, right? With the
Yeah.
Scarecrow house.
He's
So
just like a dead figure.
right. So you'd have to kind of like build out his story a little bit more so that it would make sense for most people. Because I don't think, I mean, outside of like those that really know the story of the event better, but yeah, I could see them doing it. It would just have to involve Pumpkin Lord, excuse me, in some way. I think.
Yeah, I think that's the smart way to do it. I don't know if he's strong enough, like, standalone name. He has ties to Jack. So, like, maybe you could do something there. But again, with Oddfellow kind of already been done, how many webs do you want to weave off of one character? So that's kind of
Right. And
the,
is there enough there to really build an entire event out of it? Anyways, because Scarecrow, I mean, it's a great house, but can you make a whole event out of that story? I mean, it would get kind of probably repetitive after a while, wouldn't it?
yeah. And if it were to be done, I'd say 31 would have been the time to pull the trigger on that.
Yeah,
Because
I
that could
think
have
so
been
too.
easily tied into, like, All Hallows Eve and All Halloween everywhere. And, you could do something with that whole Jack on that land, or Crow coming back as a form of, the Pumpkin Lord and something like that. So I'm not really bought in on Nathaniel Crow. I think he had a very long, extensive backstory, but more as a side character. Like, he was just a person in Jack's story versus he had a good enough story that involved Jack, if that makes sense.
No, it does. It is interesting to think about, though, that he was an unused icon concept. So maybe if Mike Aiello keeps it on the back burner or whatever, or has it saved in the books if it needs any ideas. Because I think, like you said, I don't think it would be a full-on icon, just because I feel like the similarities with the Pumpkin Lord, I feel like they could have done Nathaniel Crow being like the evolution, like turning into the Pumpkin Lord, all that kind of stuff. But I feel like you said, it's a little too late for now at this point. But I could definitely see him being used at some capacity, maybe in a different house or something like that, in a different Wicked Growth, if they ever do a sequel to it or something, maybe.
Yeah, I do think the ship has sort of sailed on Nathaniel Crow and his relevancy. It is a fun little, like, Easter egg for those deep HHN people, but I don't know if there's enough there for him to kind of take over the event. What do you think? We'll kind of finish this discussion with, do you think he's capable of hosting an event?
No, probably not.
No, I think my simple answer is no. I don't think so either.
Yeah, I'm on board with both of you. It's been a couple weeks, all right.
Exactly.
So we'll jump into my little character over here, and I think this one's interesting because on the surface it doesn't seem that interesting, but I think I found a way to make it sort of interesting, and that would be the Voodoo Queen. Now, she appeared in the Scare Zone, the Bayou of Blood. In the Scare Zone, she had a little mini show, and she had like a shed. Just think very, Louisiana backwood voodoo style. She has a great character design. She's got the head wrap, the whole big yellow dress, the little skulls hanging around everywhere. And then she was brought back. Bayou Blood was in 2014, and she was brought back in her own house, Dead Waters, which is a very well perceived, well renowned house. I think that's like a little bit of like a cult favorite, so to speak. Now, through Dead Waters, you sort of go through three different periods. You walk into the house and there's like the crashed boat. It's almost like three acts, and you went into this big, sunken riverboat, and then you kind of went deeper into the swamp. And then the second part is that you're inside the riverboat, and then once you make your way through the third act, you're in what they call the Voodoo Queen's lair. Now, that term is what really got my brain moving. And I thought, there's really no tie of icons to, voodoo and Louisiana and stuff like that. But there is a tie-in with a character and a layer. Now, I thought, what if there was some way to tie in and everyone's kind of talking about Jack versus Oddfellow. So I want to start building those, I view everything as MCU, right? I view it as, Civil War, one versus the other. So I'm trying to pair up these characters to battle against each other. And I would think Voodoo Queen would pair off very nicely with the Terror Queen. You have the whole Bayou layer versus Terra Carentis. The Voodoo Queen was notable to be using a blade, much like the Terra Queen does. You'd have the Zombies versus those Bone Choppers. You could almost have it like they aren't of this plane. You have the Terra Carentis and you have the Bayou layer as like these sub levels of Earth or whatever like that. It's almost or like hidden societies, almost like Wakanda is in the MCU, where it's just not seen by the the public. There's like rumors. There's a lot of history and story and lore around them. But I would do some sort of fight over territory or something like that, or maybe resources come into play. But I think that would be a fun little pairing of Voodoo Queen versus Terror Queen. What do you guys think about that? Because there's really not ties of the Voodoo Queen to other characters or icons. She's very standalone, but she has a very, very cool appearance. She's a part of a very well-received Scare Zone and a well-received house. And her stories do have similarities to the Terror Queen.
I think that's an interesting take. I would have never even thought to do a versus kind of thing, because immediately when I had saw that you picked her for one of the characters, I immediately thought Dr. Oddfellow, possibly just because with their similarities kind of with the witchcrafty, he kind of gave off that Dr. Facilier vibe when we first saw the voodoo-y kind of, yeah. I like that idea though. I think that's interesting. I think it would be cool to see two leading lady icons. I think that would be nice. I think it would be very different, which is nice in the sense too, with the two worlds or underworlds that they're from. So I feel like you could do a lot with the event in that sense. Man, I just cannot talk tonight. What do you think, Seamus?
We had a long day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that it's an interesting idea. I almost was thinking more you could pair her with Lady Luck, because you can kind of see how Lady Luck and
that'd be cool too.
The Voodoo Queen.
Voodoo Queen. Kind of go hand in hand in a way. I mean, obviously Lady Luck is more Vegas, but you could still kind of fit the two of them together. If not versusing each other, but like maybe coming together and working together as a team. And you could give Lady Luck some more, some due attention, which she doesn't really get.
I like that. And I like both of those. So I guess off of Seamus's, what I think would be cool is I would take that. I would almost retcon Lady Luck a little bit and turn her into like, have her have like a gambling riverboat in Louisiana or something like that to like tie them together, make her almost like she's sort of a, like Oddfellow was that time shape shifter. You could put her in a different time frame where she fits where the Voodoo Queen is and kind of hold them together in one little setting, which I think would be very fun too, because Lady Luck does not get the love she deserves. And then for Jamie's point too, instead of going against Dr. Oddfellow, what do you think about having her sort of be the chance?
A little team up
to Dr. Oddfellow. You pair the two of them together, and then you have that Oddfellow Jack, and then you have the Chance versus Voodoo Queen. It's kind of like the two power couples.
Yeah, that might fit too. I could see that happening.
The hamster wheel spinning.
I didn't even think of putting her against or with Dr. Oddfellow, but now that you bring it up with like that, the powers of the Zodiac and stuff like that, it's sort of like witchcrafty astrology, whatever. Those powers are very just out there. That could work as well.
And I could be reaching too, because it's not exactly the same kind of magic and stuff like that, but I feel like it's still in that same realm,
mystical,
kind of mystic, exactly.
Yeah, I think it's all sort of one and the same. So no, I could be talked into either of those or all three of those, honestly, because I do like that we did find a way to sort of attach these just random characters to present day ones that people probably know more than they know these random characters. But Voodoo Queen, would you like be in? Do you think that that's enough to support an event? Either of those three situations?
Yes,
Yeah.
probably the Dr. Oddfellow. What? Not saying it just because I mentioned it too, because I do like the idea.
Oh,
that you
yours
had with
is the
Terror-
best. We get it.
No, I do like the idea that you had with the Terror Queen, and I love Lady Luck. She's one of my favorite icons, and she doesn't get enough recognition. You guys are right. So honestly, I think all of them could be possibilities because I feel like how you said with Jack and Chance, I feel like sometimes it's nice to have like a little team up, like a little matchup versus doing a against, but working together instead. Do I? But I didn't really answer the question. Do I think it's likely? Probably not. and I don't want it to seem like all of the characters that we're doing for this are definitely like not a chance that they're not going to be icons, because they're probably not going to be icons. But it's still fun to do this.
Yeah, I guess that's a good thing to preface. Is like I don't think really any of these we think are going to come.
No,
but previous to last year, I am willing to bet 99% of people did not think Oddfellow was going to be this retconned character because he was not prominent. He was just another name in Jack's long history. He was in a house before pictures were taken of a house, and his character was completely redesigned. So he was essentially a nothing character, and they just worked their universal creative magic to turn out something amazing. And I feel like a lot of these characters that we're talking about tonight are more in the vein of Dr. Oddfellow than the ones we talked about the previous week, because those were more very known names, and these ones are more obscure. And I do think that if they chose to go with any of these, they'd have great success, but I don't know if they're going to, but that's a good preface to say. Like, I don't think many of these, if any of these, are going to come back, but I think there's fun ways to tie them in that we realistically, if they wanted to, they could. But yeah, that's kind of my preface on those. So let's continue along. I also too, I do think Voodoo Queen would be a very, very fun reiteration, and I think she'd be welcomed with open arms. So
I just love
Seamus,
that theming too.
I
Sorry
do.
to
I love that
interrupt you,
theme.
but I love the like Bayou, like Louisiana style down south.
Yeah, and I don't think everything has to be attached. I don't think every scare zone has to be Bayou related or anything like that.
No.
I think you can sort of tie in like how Oddfellow just like barely tied into some of them. You could find it, or you could stretch it, or whatever. But Seamus, you want to tackle the next one we got up here?
Yeah, and this one's kind of a near and dear to our hearts. So these actually, it's a twofer. You're getting a twofer with this one.
Whoa!
It's the captain and we have it written down as the widow, but I believe she goes by the Siren. At least from what I looked up, from Dead Man's Pier, Winter's Wake, and the captain is obviously the captain of the ship, and the Siren, or the widow, is his long lost wife who calls for him from the ocean shore. Obviously these two characters are really memorable from this particular year because this house was, chef's kiss, and their scene, at least her scene specifically, is very, very, it's easy to remember that because it was so well done and really a fun, a really fun part of that, event. The question becomes, can you take these two characters and flesh out enough of a story to build an entire event around? That can be, maybe harder than we think it would, because obviously they have a pretty, in-depth story to begin with, but you have to be able to find ways of, I guess, giving them quote unquote icon status, and is there enough there to carry them through? So I don't know. I think probably, but what makes it hard is how do you tie this in? Do we tie it in with another character of some kind? Do you kind of come up with a versus, or I don't like that. I hate the term versus.
The versus.
It makes it sound so like comic book movie ish, and
yeah,
I don't know. But could you tie them in with another icon, another existing icon? and give them, at least some backup or support, so that way it's not just the two of them carrying the event. But it would be nice to kind of like maybe see some sort of larger scale scare zone and have her kind of be like the main attraction in that scare zone. She's out amongst the people, and you can find the captain out amongst the people rather than giving them like another house or something like that. So I don't know. What do you think?
It's I mean, obviously I'd love it. I think we both would just take it like blindly, be like, yep, great, give it to me. But what's interesting too is another local haunt, SeaWorld Orlando, the Howl Scream over there, has used sirens as their like icons since their or first iteration over there. I think they're on their third year now, but they've used sirens, and they don't necessarily all tied in. Like, I don't think all the houses tied into the siren storyline. I think some did, some didn't. But it can be done, and it would be an interesting, like, dick measuring contest if HHN was like, "Oh, you want to use sirens? We'll show you sirens," and just kind of like, what I mean, just tried to one up them just because, and like, really, turf war style, just like shut them down. But sirens are another like mythical creature that like we haven't tapped into yet, and they do like using those creatures. We've seen it with chupacabras, we've seen it with Yeti, so I wouldn't be surprised if we did see sirens in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, sorry, I had to plug in my laptop really quick. I was gone for a second. But I was going to say, too, the siren thing is fun, although I don't think we would probably get the captain and the widow or the siren as probable, like, main icons. I do think that it would be nice to have them come back in a scare zone or in a house, kind of like some of the other characters we've mentioned before. But the sirens in itself, I think, would be something really fun to do, because I feel like the typical sirens that we picture and that are kind of like depicted in history or whatever are kind of like beautiful women with like angelic voices, but they're evil and all this kind of stuff. But every time I think of sirens now, I think of the episode of What We Do in the Shadows. How the sirens are like the really pretty, like up at the top, like ladies, and then they have like the weird, like ostrich bodies at the bottom. So I feel like sirens are different in different regions and how people depict them. So I think it would be fun to see something like that maybe, and have the different types of sirens versus the same typical ones that we're used to seeing.
Yeah, I mean the name, I feel like they were as original and great at storytelling at Universal and Horror Nights they did pick a lot of very just basic stuff to start. Like you had Jack the Clown, and then you had just a bunch of thes, the director, the usher,
the storyteller,
the caretaker, the storyteller. It was just like, I feel like everything is and the captain kind of fits in on that. It does add a sort of, it fits the bill, so to speak, of these other characters. You could do a very by the sea, nautically overarching theme. Now, I don't have anybody that I would tie it to directly, as far as like past icons are concerned. But again, it would be a fun, almost like just heartbreaking love story between these two, having, the siren, the captain lost at sea, and the wife maybe, after time goes off to try to find him. She dies, she turns into a siren, and then the captain returns alive. It's like almost like a Romeo Juliet Shakespearean love story where they just like the stars just cross each other. So I think there's a story there for sure. I just don't know if it could uphold anything, but I just think the concept of sirens is something that is interesting enough to definitely and kind of look into more deeply if I were Universal Orlando.
Just saying.
Just saying. I mean, somebody right down the street is doing it, so you might as well do it too.
No, I do like the sirens, though. I've always thought they were a fun creature.
I definitely think we're going to see sirens soon. I think there might be some sort of siren house. I just don't know if it'll be from the captain and the widow. I think they'd be smart to, because I think that she was very successful, and you don't have to outright say it, but like people will know. Like I would dive right into those, the the musical aspect of the sirens and stuff like that.
Right.
But so I guess before we jump off of this one, do you think that we'll see do you think we'll see sirens, I guess, is a better broad discussion?
Sirens, strong probability. Captain and the Widow, probably not.
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, oh, hi, dickhead.
There's the kitty.
What?
Maybe.
If you're only listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, tune into our YouTube channel, because at this very moment, at the 30-minute mark,
there
you
was a
see
cat. It's
a
gone
cat.
now.
Kitty cat. Bye.
Fucking dickhead.
But yeah, you were saying.
Yeah, no, I think that sirens, I mean, even then, like, maybe, I guess if they really do want to kind of do a shot across the bow of, of SeaWorld, because I mean, if you don't think that they don't know what each other are using, like,
Right.
do they do that? Maybe. I don't think we'll see it anytime soon. And no, I don't think that we'll get Captain or the Widow / Siren at any point as like icon level characters. We might see Dead Man's again at some point, but it won't be in the same capacity as like a mainline character.
Yeah, and I mean, Universal, I think, would take the high road and not try to like backdoor against SeaWorld, but
yeah,
I'm a big fan of taking the low road, so I think they should. Jamie, looks like we got you up next.
We do. So another couple one-off characters that we had from HHN 29 that were seen in a Scare Zone. We are talking about Dr. Plasmare and Dr. Metamorph, excuse me. The two doctors whom performed the botched surgeries on the patients in the Vanity Ball Scare Zone. So I was doing a lot of little research on our favorite little information outlet, HHN Wiki, very helpful as I've mentioned. There wasn't too much information on these two, which is kind of crappy because I really like I liked Vanity Ball. I loved Vanity Ball. It was a great Scare Zone. It was very fun. And I really like the character design of these two characters, or doctors as I should say, but there isn't really much to be said about them other than the brief moments that we got to see them passing through the Vanity Ball Scare Zone. Have you, well, Nick, I know you looked these characters up. Seamus, have you looked these characters up or seen what they were?
No,
or remember
I haven't.
from Vanity Ball?
I remember from the Scare Zone.
Yeah. So it's kind of tough with this one because it would be interesting to see Vanity Ball come back in some capacity as a house. Hint, maybe that'd be great. I think it's long overdue because I think it would make a great house. But what do you guys think the odds? I know there's not much for me to talk about it, but what do you think the odds of something of this? I don't want to say these two characters, the Dr. Metamorph and Dr. Plasmare, but maybe Vanity Ball coming back, because I unfortunately don't think that they would have something strictly designated around these two characters.
Yeah, it's interesting that they don't have like a bio, but they did come up with these distinct names
but they had
for
names.
them.
Right, that's what I thought too.
I think there is a way to sort of tie it in where it's like, they've come to give HHN a makeover of sorts, and they like, and I feel like that's vague enough that you could overlay that on the event. You could have all these like twisted modification style things, even like houses that have nothing to do with this, whether you get some random IPs, you could have the story of them act like they're ushering in, like, just say you had like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, for example. You could have them playing the like puppeteer of that, being like, oh, I mean, Leatherface has the mask on and stuff like that, and he's being beautified or something like that. It's a makeover essentially. So you could tie that into a lot, because it is a pretty just open discussion. I don't like we said, I don't think a lot of these are going to happen, but I do think that this does have avenues to go down that you could tie this into other stuff.
So I was thinking, I wanted to mention it. Sorry, Seamus, I don't know if you were going to say something real quick, but I wanted to say it before I forgot. I was thinking, from looking at the character design of these two and thinking back to the Scare Zone, I was like, man, these just look like so like familiar to like something else to me. And we'll be discussing a little bit later one of these characters as well. But what if they somehow combined, or they were in the same world or the same realm? The controller from Seek and Destroy because the
Yeah.
two doctors from Vanity Ball have those weird kind of like futuristic looking like masks, kind of
Very
like Squid
spacey.
Games, kind of spacey. They don't really have like you can't see their face at all kind of thing. And they're wearing like not doctor suits, but kind of like very like futuristic, like long white suits with like the silver accents and just like kind of weird spacey kind of stuff like that. And I was thinking, I was like, what if like the controller is the one who controls them and they kidnap these people and botch them up and do all these makeovers on them, and that's why all the people from Search and Destroy were wearing you can never see their faces or anything because they were so dismembered. But that's
Like a
just
bot
me.
society.
Kind of, yeah. But that was
So
that's kind of just
I
me
guess
going down the rabbit hole.
let's kind of combine the two then right now, because I do like the route you're going to. So we're going to shuffle up this order a little bit. So
Yeah.
Seamus, we had you later on discussing the controller, but I think this is a good time to maybe, if you want to just do a quick little run on it, because there's really not much on the controller, and we can kind of see if this would work together.
Yeah, so I mean, the controller, as everybody knows, is, I mean, in reality, he's a big computer. He's not like an actual person. So, do you bring him back in more of a physical form, like an actual like cyborg or something like that, or does he stay as like a big TV screen with a 3D-esque face?
Yep.
He's basically, he's the leader of a cyber alien regime. So it's like, do we give him a physical form or something along those lines?
I think it would be interesting if you did combine these and keep him as that digital, but almost turn it into like AI, he's an AI, outputting the algorithm of what a perfect society, a perfect, beautiful world would look like. And these two doctors, Dr. Plasmir and Dr. Metamorph, are sort of his leads on this. And they sort of are the ones that, kind of push forth his ideas. So it's almost like a mix of like, bad AI mixed with like the Matrix, mixed with, that Vanity Ball, like, ridiculous, beautiful makeover. And there's a way to combine it all. I think it's there.
I'm kind of feeling it. I was thinking about it and I was like, maybe. But I did forget. I'm glad you mentioned that, Seamus, that he is that kind of like computerized character, because I kind of feel like that diminishes my idea a little bit. I didn't think about that.
What's the name of the thing from Power Rangers? Zortan or something like that? Or
I don't know.
Isn't it
the
Zorg?
Floating head? Zorg, the head, the whatever,
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of like what he always gave me vibes of. But I don't know. I wouldn't mind seeing those kind of be teamed up. I don't think they will, because they're such different. We have that sci-fi spacey kind of stuff, and then you have the Vanity Ball in its own world. But I think there is a way to do it, and I like the whole. I mean, AI is such a popular thing right now. It would be fun to sort of tap into that fear through Horror Nights, because it's a very real fear that's out there. And the controller sort of fits that bill, I guess. So maybe, I guess
I was just gonna say, maybe I just really want a They Live house or a Scare Zone in some form, way, shape, or form. And that's why I'm
probably as close as you'd get.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's just go around the horn real quick on either of these, both of these, or neither of these. What do you think we'll ever see this stuff again? Or, I mean, I don't think they're going to lead an event, but do you think we'll see these in a house or something like that? Or
I think the controller would be pretty cool. I think the AI route that you were going would be very interesting, and I think they could definitely make more of an icon or something around him or them. And I feel like it'd be the perfect time to bring back all the interactive stuff on the websites and on the app that you could do around the park. And I think that'd be the perfect opportunity for it. So probably not for either of them, but maybe the controller, I would say.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember the controller or that Scare Zone itself being super well received, so I'm not sure if they'll bring it back. It's hard to really see them doing him in a way that would make sense. I think like you'd have to bring him back the way he is or he was, and I think just with how he was accepted at the time, what would you do with him? So I don't think so. Yeah. Maybe in some way, but I doubt it.
another the icon, right? The controller.
Yeah.
real
That's
generic
true.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll see anything with Seek and Destroy, but I do think we are due for some sort of Vanity Ball revision. So I'd be on the lookout for that in the next couple of years, because I think that would be I know it's a fan favorite, so it's just a matter of if they can make that into a smart enough house.
Mhm.
Seamus, looks like we got you coming up next again, and then I'll tag on mine after, because I gotta make mine up pretty much.
Yeah, so I have, which I'm not gonna lie, I'm not super excited about this, but we have the Pumpkin on here, Pumpkin Lord's Evolution, the the big farting, angry, laughing
Needs
Pumpkin
redemption.
Lord,
We need to redeem that. We can't go out on such a low note.
who was stuck at the front of the theme park
Mhm.
the entire time. Yeah, I don't know. They did him so dirty that year. Like, I'm sorry. I know that a lot of people thought it was funny. It was it was fun to see him back again. I was really kind of hoping that they would bring him back as an actual icon. Like, they'd bring him back in a real capacity, not so fast, not within a year. And they did, and they brought him back, and we're like, "Hey, look, he's funny now, haha!" And it's like, okay, you kind of it's like chopping. I don't know. It's like you completely emasculated him. Like, he was scary in the house. The house was really good, and then you went and were like, "Hey, he farts and makes smoke. It smells like pumpkin." Ha ha ha! Isn't that funny, guys?
I hate when things are
It's like,
scary and they try
I
to
hate
make
when
it
they
funny.
do that.
I hate it.
I hate when they do that, and
Yep.
he's not the first time they've done it, and he probably won't be the last.
Mhm.
But yeah, so I think they need to bring him back. He probably really should be the next, when they do another icon, they should bring him back, and he should be it. I'm not asking for them to do it in the next 2 or 3 years, but at least at some point soon, when they do get ready to do that again, he's the one that they bring back, because he deserves better than what they did to him 2 years ago.
Yeah, for sure.
Save our Pumpkin Lord.
Save him.
Yeah,
But yeah.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think the way they portrayed him was poor. I really wish I was a fly in the wall for some of the discussions that led to that, being like, this is probably a good idea. Because I just
it's not.
This is
Please
simply
don't.
too good.
He's pretty much the Grinch. He's pretty much the Grinch.
I have to
at
find
this
away
point.
money on this.
I'm glad you got that, Seamus.
Good.
It's simply too good.
Yeah, that's
All right.
pretty much the extent of it.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what they said about Lil Boo. I've got to
Oh,
find a way to
yeah.
make money on
They
this.
definitely
Gotta
did that
find a
with
way.
Lil Boo for
So
sure.
instead of
Yeah.
finding a way to make money on it, they should be focusing on finding a way to re-elevate him to true icon status, because
Mhm.
like we talked about, the Wicked Growth was just such an unbelievable house, and then
Yeah.
to get what we got the year after was disappointing, to say the least. But I do think that there's a way to redeem it. I think, and we've talked a lot about this before, so if you've listened to us previously, then I'm sorry. We'll keep this kind of description brief, but I do view him as Groot, and I know I always go to MCU, but I view him as these different evolutions and different styles. You go from young
Mhm.
Groot to teen Groot to adult Groot to King Groot to Alpha Groot to old Groot. There's a bunch of different variations of the age, and I think that's something you could play with the Pumpkin Lord. Whereas maybe that was just a phase, and you can bring him back as the Pump King, or some sort of higher evolution where he's got the gourd crown on the top, and he's bulkier, and he's got all his gas out. He already farted everything out in 31. And he's all just fucking shredded, and just turn him into a huge sex icon. It'd be awesome.
Well, I mean, now you say that, they could if you've ever seen, which one is it? Is it Resident Evil 3 that had the big fucking massive ass monster? I forget what they call them. Oh shit! What the hell do they call them? It's like Resident Evil 3.
I'm so bad with those names.
I'll think about it. But they have He's basically just this big unkillable monster, and you could make him like he's now
Super
evolved to the
OP.
point where he is like massive and bulked out and like is kind of
Just
really
OP.
the king of the event at that point.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah,
You know, what would be
I would
even
do something like
cooler
that.
is through the 2 months that the event would be running, or however long, just about a little over 2 months. It would be cool if he was the icon for the whole time, but if throughout the season, every time you would see him, he would be an evolution of him. That'd
See,
be
that
kinda
would have
cool.
been perfect for
I
31,
know,
leading us to
know.
his next appearance as like,
Yeah.
because then that sends us down a road of we have a season of growing and then a
Mhm.
fourth iteration as like the beast
Yeah.
of Halloween or something like that.
Yeah.
But
Because I mean, shit, they've had Jack like 17 times. I don't see why they can't do it. Which
I
I'm
don't
not
think we'll
hating,
ever get another
but
Jack style character with that
Yeah.
repetition, but
he's
it's
just
Well, it's also because Jack he's kind of like the unwritten mascot of the whole event, if you think about it.
even
Yeah.
people who aren't familiar with like Halloween Horror Nights, who aren't from here and stuff like that, can associate Jack the Clown, I feel like, with HHN. So I
I
feel like
agree.
he is kind of like their spokesperson.
yeah.
Mhm.
So before we jump off, Pumpkin Lord, do we think we will see an evolution of sorts? Do you think we'll A, see him again, and B, if we do you think he'll be the same as he was, or will we see this evolution?
I think we're gonna get him back. I think he's
think
too
we
good of
will.
a character to just leave on the sidelines. But like I said, it has to be in a way that isn't what they did 2 years ago. They have to do something different and actually make him scary again, make him a badass again, not what he was.
I think we could see him back too, but I think I would like to see a new version of him, a boosted version of him.
Yeah, I want to see him like roided up. I want him like Scott Steiner. I want him freak.
Like
I want him Big Papa Pump. Holla if you hear me.
I just think of him
I
like
want him
walking around like super buff, like Satan
I want
in
Scott
in
Steiner
South
back.
Park. In South Park, and he's just got like the big fucking like horns, and he's super jacked and has like the ripped like leather like short
Oh,
black
like,
pants on.
oh, sorry, guys.
War 40. Or he's like the big devil from This Is the End.
That's what I was
Giant
thinking.
sword and
I
his
couldn't
huge
think
dick
of it.
hanging, swinging around over
Yes.
cities.
Fuck, Tenacious D, Dave Grohl's devil
Yes.
at the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's what I need. I need Pumpkin
Big,
Lord back as
veiny, orangey fucking devil
Yeah.
pumpkin
yes.
Mhm.
Like you can make him just look so
with a big
grotesque.
swinging dick too. It has to include
Yeah.
the big swinging hairy dick.
Yeah, 2 little
'Cause-
pumpkin seeds and the guts just slapping around, and you could sell that as like you could sell it as a fanny pack, and you could put it right in the front and have it. Look at that, we're making millions for them.
Or a popcorn bucket.
Yeah, popcorn buckets, sure. Very phallic shaped popcorn buckets.
Right.
If anything, we're making shirts that say "Big Swinging Gourd." I'm telling you.
We'll
Trademark it now.
we'll workshop a couple Pumpkin Lord phallic style shirts for the upcoming season. We'll get that in the back burner working for us. But yeah, I think we're gonna see the gourd back.
The ladies like my squash.
Lord.
Yeah. Pick these
Now I
pumpkins.
stop thinking of a big fucking dominatrix pumpkin lord.
Yeah. Super sexy
Pumpkin
Pumpkin
with a
Lord.
ball gag in his mouth.
Yeah, he's the Pumpkin Lord pimp daddy. Just all juiced up. Kind of like Jersey Shore. He's like Ronnie from Jersey Shore. All right, I think we'll see him back. Let's move along.
So
All right,
fast.
that was good.
All right, let's get it back. I'm up next. So this is like not even a character. This is a completely original character from something we have seen. And again, I'm taking the generic HHN route of naming it the blank. And we're going to be talking about Anarcade. Now, there was no like leader in this zone. It was at the Plaza of the Stars where it's very much started and continued that trend of like just showcasing what's going to be at the event. So it wasn't really, it was like its own zone, but it was really just like an advertisement for what you're going to see throughout the night. But this was like an 80s style arcade with these, chainsaw wielding characters. You had the girls on the stilts. You had really cool black light character design, which is really cool. But I think what they were missing was really the leaders. And what I would do is I would turn that into what we would call the game master, somebody that kind of overlooked this almost tiny realm. I think of it almost like Wreck-It Ralph, where it's like a realm inside of these physical pieces that are just kind of exploding out into the real world now. But I would turn it into the game master. Now it's tough because we're definitely following the trend of video games being reintroduced as houses with The Last of Us. So there's a lot more options now. There's Silent Hill is coming back. BioShock's got a TV show coming out. Resident Evil is still a prominent horror video game. Five Nights at Freddy's. We're around the corner from an event that if they had 3 or 4 of those, people wouldn't really complain because yes, they're all video games, but they're all still very different from one another. So it would be really, really cool. And I would just be really interested to see if they could bring this back to life. Now, I think it would get very I don't think people would get bored because I think people really loved the 80s aesthetic at 28 or 29 it was. I think that was a fan favorite. Just the vibe itself, the music, the lights, was just such a fun aesthetic. And I think that you could tie this in. I'm a big advocate for Anarcade. I think it had just it's just bare bones, right? There's just not much story there, so you could really take it anywhere. But they have the whole, you could have this, this was kind of the tagline for the zone, but you could make it the tagline of the event where it's once you scream, it's game over. That could be your event tagline instead of using Never Go Alone for the 46th time in a row now at this point. But again,
that's coming back. Don't you worry.
Yeah.
Don't you
never don't not go alone. Yeah, See You in the Fog,
Right.
Never Go Alone, Scream Squad, all that fun crap.
Lil Boo.
Yeah, Lil Boo. But I don't know. It won Scare Zone of the Year. I just don't. I think obviously because there is no character, that's a little bit tougher. I think it's more of a want than anything that's even close to having any sort of relevancy. But I think it's a fun discussion at least. What do you guys think?
I think it is something fun to think about too, because I love that Scare Zone and I just love that whole, like you said, that 80s arcade vibe. Big fan. And I think they can make a whole excuse me. I think they can make a whole event based around it, just in the fact that you could just go with that whole 80s theme. You don't really have to have something specific. It doesn't have to be all video game related or all Anarcade related, but it could still have that hint of it throughout the event.
Yeah, and you could make it like each of the houses are being zapped into a game format. It doesn't have to be based on a game, but it's almost like you're walking into a new game.
It almost kind of reminds me of that game show on Nickelodeon. Remember that one with the
Yes.
game, the fucking arcade games or whatever,
Yep.
and the kids would go play the arcade games in real
Yes.
life. It feels like that. And I think they need to expand on Anarcade anyways. I think It's a Scare Zone didn't really get enough. There wasn't enough to it, and they need to maybe flesh that out. And they could totally make an entire event based around that. Plus, we all love that 80s vibe with the chiptune music, the 80s synth music.
Yeah.
You could totally bring that back and create some character around that.
Nick Arcade. Very, very, very thought out name for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. I just think it's fun. I think it's an interesting way. I think you could overlay this to IPs and originals without it being super pushy. You could tie just about anything into this. If you had it last year, right? Dueling Dragons was choosing thy fate. That could be that video game. You're walking into a Dueling Dragons game or something like that. Just theme it as it's a game that they just made up, but the house stays the same. It doesn't change the house at all. If anything, it kind of fits even more with the whole choose. It's almost like a choose your adventure style game.
Right.
It kind of fits into that realm, but I don't know. I don't think it'll happen. I just really hope we see Anarcade back in some way, shape, or form. I think there's a lot that can be played with it, and yeah, I don't know. I think it would be interesting enough. But Jamie, you want to tackle the next one, and then looks like we got just 2 more after that. I think.
Yeah, let's see what we're working with here. I lost my spot. Oh, so unfortunately, we don't have too much to talk about this character as well, but I do like the persona or the idea that we have of this character. So Pasek, Pasek, don't want to pronounce it wrong, probably butchering
Pasek.
it, Pasek, but he is the puppet theater troupe leader from the puppet theater house that we had back at 29. Was it 29?
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah,
28 or
30.
29.
I think it was 30.
It might have been 30. Oh, God. I'm getting old. But
They all
yeah,
blend together at
there
this
was
point.
unfortunately literally nothing on this character except for the mentions that it was his troupe, that they had the different members of the troupe through the house. You had the sad troupe member, you had the vintage troupe member, a couple different names that they had for some of the other characters as well. But personally, I loved Puppet Theater. I thought it was a great house. I know Nick and Seamus were fans of it as well. Just ever since when I was younger and Dead Silence had first came out, that was one of the first like doll or like puppet ventriloquist movies that I saw that I actually thought was really good, and I still love it to this day. And so any sort of capacity with that kind of stuff, I've always just thought dolls, I feel like dolls are just world renowned like creepy icons for people. Like porcelain vintage dolls have just always been kind of like creepy and give off that creepy vibe, especially like ventriloquist dummies and stuff like that. So it was nice to see something different, like how we've also had Dollhouse of the Damned and stuff like that too. But it's tough because I don't have much to go on other than the fact that he's just the troop leader, and maybe you could have him as obviously being like the leader, the ringmaster kind of thing, leading the troop around HHN for the event. But it's kind of hard to think about. I'm not as crafty with Nick as when it comes to thinking of icon descriptions for someone we don't really have much for.
Yeah, I mean, again, following the trend of very, very thought out names, you could just simply be the puppet master. And whether that infringes on copyright of that amazing franchise or not.
That's why I didn't say it.
I think it's different enough, so I think it's just the name itself. I don't think they own Puppet Master as a name unless you're making it about his puppets and stuff like that. But I mean, you could tie it into something with Jack or Oddfellow, right? Like he was a part of their traveling show. You had like I know he was from, I think it was San Francisco, or he was London based or something. I know that the Puppet Theater was located in San Francisco and kind of crushed under an earthquake. But I think that there's still a fun story there. And again, if you have a character like a puppet master who's simply just, pulling the strings of the event, that could tie in overall, because it's not like every house has to be a theater aesthetic. It can be just anything, and he's pulling the strings, so to speak. It's more of just a play on words than anything. So I think this one could be, expanded upon to an extent. Again, I don't think it's gonna be an overall event theme, but I would love to see Puppet Theater back in some capacity. It's tough because like you have these great one-offs, and you're like, do I want to see it back? It's like, some movies just don't need sequels, but you still kind of want them anyways. So it's that roll of the dice. Like, is it going to live up to your standards? I mean, what they did in that house, which just blows my mind still, that it was in a sprung tent, is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
But I think it's another character that doesn't have anything about him. So it's like, the world is your oyster. You can do what you want with him. But I don't know. What do you guys think then, Seamus, for the Puppet Master, or, Puppet Theater, some sort of tie-in or comeback?
Yeah, I think Pumpkin Theater is a good wager. I think that it was a really well-received house. I think they could do more with it. I don't know if we'll get an icon out of it. I mean, I think that Pasek character might be something they could do along the lines of like the usher of the director. I think you may have mentioned
That's
that.
what I was gonna.
Yeah,
I didn't mention it, but I was going to.
Oh yeah, I think like you could kind of tie him in with those two characters and add him to their story, because they kind of fit right in together to begin with. They kind of like, 3 peas in a pod. We're using just all the phrases tonight, but yeah, I think that it's possible we could see this again And I'd want to. I think pumpkin. Geez, I think I got pumpkin on the brain. I think Puppet Master deserves a second try, or not a try, but a second go.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned it because I kind of forgot about it, but I would love to see the Usher kind of tie into this theater a little bit. You know, he was working at I know he's more of a movie theater kind of guy, but maybe, you know, early on or whatever, you could find a way to retcon in that to make it make sense. So before we jump on to the second to last one, do you think we'll see this one?
I could see it.
I could see it. I could see it if they went the route that you're talking. How he's kind of the puppet master the whole event, pulling the strings kind of thing. I really like that route.
I would love. I don't think we will. I would love to though, because I do think that there's a lot of possibilities there.
Yeah.
All right. My next one, again, very generic name, the Evil Queen.
Ooh.
Might not mean much to you, but she has been around a handful of times. She was the main antagonist to the Scary Tales Once Upon a Nightmare House in 2008, which was the third iteration of the Scary Tales franchise. I think the first ones were 2001, 2002. But she was sort of, I mean, there's a lot of like little bit of history where she does, there's multiple versions where she was kind of a servant for Fear, but then that year he was re-envisioned to a Jack year, so it didn't really there. She was also tied to Bloody Mary's court, and she was like a part of Mary Agnes' personality. So it was kind of like this weird, she kind of got lost in those lost icons. And I think because of the whole Bloody Mary and the Fear stuff, I think she sort of got lost with it. So she was a part of all of the scary, well, maybe not all of them, but she was part of the 2001 house, the 2008 house, and the 15 steampunk or scream punk. Sorry. They love those catchy little names that are fake words. But again, we mentioned in our guest map, I don't think we put it on the map as Scary Tales because we did a Slaughter Cinema sequel, but we did put a Wizard of Oz on there, which I think this sort of ties into. And I think that you could have this almost be that overlaying fairy tale, rewriting the history of books kind of thing. Again, you could overlay that on every house. Again, I guess I'll just use Dueling Dragons. You could have her be like, she's writing the book, this fantasy book. And if not for nothing, if you do want to tie them all together, you can sort of do all of the house intros, sort of like how Dueling Dragons started with like those paintings, or, you know, not paintings, but those pictures hanging up. You could do it like the Revenge of the Tooth Fairy entrance, where it's sort of like a storybook entrance with a monologue, and then have it just jump into the house and be normal. I think there's a way to kind of do that, and that could be your tie-in there. She used her little minions. They were called scribes, and they rewrote all these fairy tales and gave them like these dark endings. So with her being sort of this like story, you know, revisionist, I would pair her against the storyteller. I think that's a pretty good, easy layup right there. So I don't know. What do you think? The Evil Queen's already been around long enough. So it's like, has the ship sailed? I know Scary Tales is still like one of the, you know, most renowned houses that people want a sequel to.
I think the ship has sailed only in the sense that I think it would be too similar to the storyteller. And I see that you thought we could go the versus route or have them go against each other or something like that. But I feel like the ship might be sailed with that one, unfortunately.
Yeah. Maybe storyteller like puts her as a part of her story. She comes to life and tries to like, you know, kind of take the power from her and put the storyteller into books and kind of finishes her story there. Like she locks her almost like Page Master style.
Like Goosebumps?
Shout out Macaulay Culkin.
When he had to lock them back in the book in Goosebumps with Jack Black?
Kind of just like that. You could do something like that where she is a character from the storyteller's stories. She comes to life and she traps storyteller back in. And it's kind of like a catch-22.
Yeah, I could see it.
And I feel like it's been long enough since they've had the storyteller for the event.
Yeah. And again, that's kind of like, if we do want to add these like little sub characters back to back to back, and lead to that big anniversary year, you could have them sort of collide with one another, and you could kind of usher out the old and in with the new. You could have another 15-year storyline with all these new characters, and not have to rely on rolling out old Jack the Clown again to sell some tickets. If you invest in these new stories, they will pay off.
Yeah, they did it with Sweet 16.
You have to do it. Exactly. You've seen what happens when you really invest in these characters. Pumpkin Lord, moneymaker. Dr. Oddfellow, moneymaker. You just have to invest. You have to give them that chance. Lil Boo. Yeah, Lil Boo. But yeah, I would love to see that play out. Whether it's with Storyteller or not, I'd love to see the Evil Queen sort of like fairy tales, book style taking over the event would be fun. But what do you guys think before we jump to the last one?
I think that would be really fun, actually.
Yeah, I don't see why it wouldn't happen.
Yeah. I'm not sure. What year did you say?
Excuse me.
I don't think I ever got to do this a Scary Tales house, if I'm not mistaken.
This one was the Once Upon a Nightmare. This one was 08, so 18.
Take it back. Maybe I did. My memory's terrible, so maybe I did, maybe I didn't. But if I did, I don't have too much of a recollection of it. But I do love the whole storybook telling old, like, Hansel and Gretel, Three Blind Mice, just like little stuff like that. The Goldilocks and the Three Bears. I feel like there's a lot that you could do with this. And it kind of makes me, like how you mentioned when we had with our guest map before, just the Wizard of Oz vibe would be such a fun house or such a fun zone. I would just love to see something like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm along the same lines as both of you. So Jamie, why don't you polish us off and go over this last character? Because I think this is another huge fan favorite.
This is a fan favorite, including one of mine as well. So this one I wrote a little bit more on because we actually had a little bit more intel on these characters, I should say, kind of a little twofer. So we are going to be talking about Samuel Meats and his mascot, Meaty Meats. So a little backstory, Meats was a renowned meat company located in Wyandotte County, Ohio, that specialized in fine meats of the homeless and criminals. Samuel Meat is the friendly neighborhood butcher and owner of Meats. His grandfather founded the meat factory during World War II after coming to the States from Romania. Initially selling meat from pigs and bovine livestock, Sam's father then inherited the business and began losing money. To boost sales, they switched their recipe and began secretly serving human meat from the local homeless population and unauthorized visitors and lawbreakers. After the change, business was booming, so they stuck with the recipe. Plus, it kept the city clear of vagrants. The factory is also believed to be the main meat supplier of the Universal Palace Theater. Sam Meats appeared in the Leave It to Cleaver house from HHN 2009, ripped from the silver screen. He also returned alongside his mascot Meaty Meats at HHN 31, and Welcome to Scary in a recreated diner scene from Leave It to Cleaver. So yeah, a lot of insight on our pal Sam Meats over here, which has been a longtime favorite of mine, seeing him in the previous Leave It to Cleaver house back in the day and ripped from the silver screen. And I feel like out of the whole list that we talked about, he and Meaty Meats, the mascot, I feel like they can go hand in hand and make a very cool icon, or icons, I should say. Just because with the relation that he has with Meat Factory being in Wyandotte County in Ohio and being in Scary, and there's just such a big universe that you could pick from and have him go so many different directions with curating the event. I feel like it would maybe be more towards the originals, not as much IPs. It would be kind of harder to think about stuff to do with the IPs, but still a really cool thought because I think he's a really good character and he has a lot of good backstory.
Yeah, I would love to see this character kind of return. It's a little bit tougher tying him in just because it's like a meat owner, but I think the ties to Scary or Carrie is a fun way to bring it about. Maybe we talked about him last week, but maybe there's a way to have the overarching theme be just Scary Ohio. Have the whole event be Scary Ohio. Yeah. And you could do a house with Meaty Meats and make him like a prominent figurehead. You can make a house and have HR Blood and Guts be a prominent figurehead. Yeah. And you could kind of like have the whole event be Cary, Ohio themed.
Psycho Scarapy.
Yeah, you could bring back some of those ones.
Do.
And it would be like a best hits sort of year, but like people wouldn't care. Like if you did a Psychoscarapy house and a Meaty Meats house and an HR Blood and Guts house, you would please just about everybody, I think.
Yeah.
So I'd love to see like an overall Carrie theme. And I think that's the only way you would get Meaty Meats back.
Mm-hmm. And the theme could literally be Welcome to Carrie, Ohio, or something along those lines, you know?
Yeah, like The Town You Love to Die In or something like that.
Yeah, I like that. And it's just tough to think, like I mentioned, with the IPs and stuff like that too. But I guess you could try to find maybe older films from that genre, or just not as more recent films, so it's not as differential from probably how it would be set up and stuff like that. So
yeah, there's ways to tie it into like you can do it. You can definitely make it happen. Seamus, what do you think about like a whole Carrie, Ohio?
Yeah, I think we've talked about it before. I'm totally down. You include him. You could include H&R. You can include a lot of the stuff that we saw in the house a couple of years ago. I think it would work.
Cindy, I was just going to say for the schoolhouse. Yep.
No, I'd love to see that. That would be kind of on my list. But yeah, that's all the characters we had for today that we're going to kind of talk into. This is another fun little deep dive style episode of these just random characters that there are ways to bring them back, you know, whether they directly tie into lore or not. They've proven they can do that.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed that. So let's get into our little wrap up before we get out of here. Horror movies of the week. We've sort of been on vacation, so I only watched a couple things, but nothing too major. I didn't watch it, but I sort of revisited a lot of the Zodiac stuff because we're going to be in San Fran. And then on the plane ride home, and once we got home, I've been rewatching Dahmer, the Netflix one. I just forgot how good that is. But has anybody else watched anything that we want to chit chat about before we scoot off?
Before we left on vacation, I'm doing a review for VHS 94. I don't know if you've seen that one, Seamus, but I almost finished all of it. Probably the scariest fucking one I've watched. It was really weird. You didn't like it?
No, I think we've talked about it. I wasn't a big fan of it. No,
I thought it was
not the worst one, but it wasn't my favorite.
You didn't like. Damn.
Oh wait, well hold on.
I'm talking about 94.
How? But I watched that one. Is that one new?
So VHS 94, I think, was the fourth.
Because 99 was the one I didn't like very much.
I think that was the newer one, right?
94 is from 2021. It's the fourth installment.
I have watched that one. I don't remember. They all run together at this point. 99 was the one that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say if you haven't seen it, watch it because it's really good. No, I was just gonna say it's good.
Yeah, I haven't. The VHS ones are tricky for me. I'm not like. They have to be really, really good. Those compilation ones are tricky for me.
It's basically any found footage movie. It has to be done the right way, otherwise it's gonna suck.
Exactly.
Yeah. Seamus, you watch anything over the last week or
Nothing specific. No, nothing specifically horror. I finished Echo and I started Masters of the Air, but they're not horror movies or horror shows or anything like that.
Yeah, you gotta break it up a little bit. We can't watch horror all the time. I just watch way too much movies and TV that I'm watching a variety of stuff. I just have too much free time on my hands, apparently. Yeah, that's about it. I mean, our wrap up, we'll kind of get Shutter Sundays moving again now that we're back in town. That was fun. We did if you want to go check out our YouTube, Jamie got to interview the writer of Destroy All Neighbors, which stemmed from our Shutter Sunday viewing of it. So if you are not aware of our Shutter Sundays, head over to our YouTube page and watch it. And if you want to watch her interview, head over to our YouTube page and watch it because it's all uploaded there. And that's something we'll probably continue to do in the future. Well, I'll let Jamie sort of head the interviews because I don't want to put any more on my plate.
I enjoy it.
Yeah, but that's about it. We will be back soon. I mean, we're at this point in the middle of February. That first speculation map is coming sooner than you think. That map drops late February, early March.
And it'll be September.
I know.
Exactly. So get ready because I'm sure within the next 3 weeks or so, we will be talking about, I don't want to say concrete HHN news, but we're going to talk about some pretty grounded HHN news. But that about wraps it up. So until next time, this is Nick.
And this is Seamus.
This is Jamie.
Happy haunts.
You know, it's Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good
And again, I would just like to thank Vampire Stepdad for letting us use his music for our intro and outro music. So if you would, just go check him out. Spotify, Facebook. Again, that is Vampire Stepdad.